Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to welcome you to tonight's first session of a 3-session mini course, The Saint, the Queen, and the Joker, a brief introduction to Sephardic folklore. I am Professor Nancy Sinkoff, the academic director of the Alan and Joan Bildner Center for the Study of Jewish Life. And our course is being offered by Dr. Ron Lasry, who is the Aresi Visiting Scholar here at Rutgers this semester. Let me tell you the ground rules, which I think many of you are familiar with, and then I will introduce Professor Lasry. This is a meeting format in Zoom, but you are all muted. If you want to ask a question, and I hope you will, please put it in the chat. Dr. Lasry is going to have a break after the first section of the course to provide for you time and space to ask some questions as opposed to holding them towards the end. So don't be shy, put the questions in the chat and I will moderate and pose them to Dr. Lasry. The mini course is being recorded and we will then see about uploading it later. But right now, pay attention to everything you're going to learn. Dr. Ron Lasry is the Jerome and Lorraine Aresti Visiting Scholar at the Bildner Center this term. He has offered a faculty seminar for faculty and graduate students, and he's doing his own research, producing articles and working on his book manuscript, and he's also offering this mini course. Dr. Lasry is a scholar of Sephardic literature and classical rabbinic literature. His research examines the reception of stories in the Talmuds, which are often referred to as the Agadah, within the Jewish communities of medieval Iberia and among the Sephardic diaspora around the Mediterranean basin. He is particularly interested in how the contribution of literary analysis can enhance our understanding of the cultural history of Sephardic Jews. Dr. Lasry completed his PhD in Hebrew literature at the Ben Gurion University of the Negev, and his dissertation was entitled Yitzchak Aboab's and Yisrael al-Nakawaz, Menorat HaMe'ol, a literary evaluation of 2 anthologies of rabbinic Agadah from 14th century Castile. It presented 2 rival Sephardic interpretive methods of handling the complex corpus of Agadah. One school emphasized the mimetic or political elements, and the other focused on aesthetic adaptation. So he looked at competing literary strategies in the reception of the Talmudic stories. One example of Sephardic approaches to Talmudic stories will be presented in a forthcoming article he has that will come out in the Jewish Quarterly Review, which is a major journal publication for Jewish studies. So please welcome Ron Lasry, and I will go to the background and I'll come back during the Q&A. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Professor Sinkoff, for this kind introduction and for all your ongoing help. I also want to thank Professor Paula Tartakov for her support and generosity. And I would like also to thank Karen Small, Jenny German, and Gabriel Duke from the Bildner Center. So without any additional thanks, I would say only that I'm very excited to be here today and to speak with you. I'll just upload my presentation and we'll go on. Okay, so my name is Ron Lasry, and this is the first session out of 3 in the course The Saint, the Queen, and the Joker, an introduction to Sephardic folklore. Today, we're going to, and this course is going to be a brief, as it is written in the title, it is going to be a brief introduction to Sephardic folklore. We're going to meet our saint of the day, Ha'ari, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Solomon Luria Ashkenazi, and we're going to deal with folklore and the Sephardic folklore in particular. I want to I know that you can notice this work of art, these 3 cards that are a part of a full deck of cards. that was preserved. It's the first deck of cards that we have from medieval times, the first full one. And we can see here the Joker, the Queen, and this is actually a king, but today we will use him as a saint. Okay, so I would like firstly to address the word saint and its usage. Okay, a Jewish saint were usually used to talk about Christian saints. When I say saint, I refer to a tzaddik or kadosh, a holy man in general. Each society has its own holy men and our own heroes. And I think that today we will see that it is both beneficial to relate to the general nature of all of the heroes together, and also very important to notice what is unique about Jewish heroes and what is also unique about Sephardic heroes. So let's go on. So in order to do that, I would like to read Sephardic stories that are relating to the figure of the Ari. But in order to do that, we'll go through a definition of what is folklore. Then we're going to meet the folk, and we'll get a short introduction to the Sephardic culture. And later we will introduce the lore. We will talk about the heroes and the stories about how does stories about heroes are usually being told in general culture and in Jewish culture. And then we will look at our hero of the day, the Ari. Okay, so in order to address what is folklore, I decided that it would be better to begin with an etymology. The word folklore was composed by the antiquarian William John Thoms in 1846. And I just took a dictionary of synonyms in order to understand what is folk and what is lore. So folk is people, ethnic group, clan, race, society, nation, general public, and population. You see, all of these are just synonyms. Lore would be beliefs, culture, traditions, mythology, ethos, teaching, doctrine, wisdom, and knowledge. So just get a grasp of what folklore is. It is some kind of knowledge that belongs to some kind of group of people, some kind of folk. When Regina F. Benedicts and Galit Chazan Rokem wrote the introduction to their companion to folklore, they opened the definition by telling a story. And I wanted to tell this story right away now. Once, several blind men encountered an elephant. Each one of them was ordered to touch him and to feel and describe what he's feeling. One touched his leg. The other touched the trunk, while the third touched his ear, and the fourth, the tail. He held the tail. Afterwards, each one of them was asked to describe what was his experience. And of course, you can imagine that all of these experiences were different. And this story is brought in the beginning of the introduction in order to say we can only grasp one aspect of folklore. We can only grasp a partial understanding of what folklore is actually all about, because we cannot define it in a perfect way. So after saying that, let's read one partial definition of what is folklore. And what I like about this definition is that it starts with the sentence, folklore is notoriously difficult to define. This is the way that the definition actually starts. So the term now covers a broader field than it did when it was invented in 1848, linking many aspects of cultural traditions, past and present. It includes whatever is voluntary and informally communicated created or done jointly by members of a group of any size, age, or social and educational level. It can circulate through any media, oral, written, or visual. Of course, the stories, in the beginning, the stories were told orally. I told you a story and you heard it. Now you remember it and you can tell it onward. But once people started writing these stories and filming movies about these stories, now folklore can move in any vessel or media. But the essential criterion is that the presence of a group is the presence of a group whose joint sense of what is right and appropriate shapes the story, performance, or custom, not the rules of any official body like the state or the church, for instance. That means that folklore is voluntary. We can tell a joke. We are not obliged to laugh, and we don't have to tell a story. We can tell a story. We're not. It is not a rule that we should dress in this manner in this occasion. It's not religion. Okay. So after defining folklore, I would like us to go a bit forward and to meet the folk of the folklore. And that is, I would like us to see the origin. In order to talk about the Sephardic culture, we must firstly understand that the origin of Sephardic culture is from Sepharad, that is Spain, España, the Iberian Peninsula in general. Sorry. Jews lived in the Iberian Peninsula for about 1,500 years. They began the first Jews that we know of, because we have tombstones that indicates that with Jewish symbols are used to live there in the Roman Empire in the first and the second centuries onward. And after the Roman period, the Visigoth period began from the 5th to the 8th century, and then the Muslim occupied the Iberian Peninsula in a very brief occupation, and they ruled there for 300 years. And then the Christian population, or the Christian soldiers, slowly occupied Spain step by step in hundreds of years, until it eventually became a Christian state. The completion of the occupation of Spain by the Christians is known to us by the expulsions of the Jews and the Muslims from Spain. After this occupation was completed, it was possible or seemed logical to expel all of the Jews from Spain. And now I would like to concentrate on the expulsion and on another event, which we usually do not hear about that often, and it is quite shocking because it is important and it held great magnitude. And the stories that we are going to hear about the Ari are very connected, both to the expulsion and both to the 1391 Cana riots. And let's talk about these riots for a minute. The massacre of 1391 was a violent riot, or actually multiple violent riots that occurred all over Spain. It is estimated, and these estimations are just horrifying. It is estimated that 1/3 of the Spanish Jews were killed. 1/3 of the Spanish Jews were converted to Christianity by force. And only 1/3 remained. And this is also important to emphasize that when we are talking about the Jews of Spain, we are actually talking about most of the Jews that live in Europe in the medieval times. There are by far the largest community. And when we are talking about 1/3 of them that are being killed and 1/3 of them that are being converted by force, we are talking about a catastrophe to the Jewish people as a whole. The conversions, the mass conversions, created a new kind of Sephardic Jews. We know them by their diverse names: the conversos, also the Marranos or the crypto Jews, and also new Christians. The conversos were considered by the church to be Christians. After a baptism, a person is considered to be Christian, and in medieval times, it is impossible to reverse baptism. That means that in medieval times, in the end of the 14th century, 1/3 of the Jews of Spain were Christians now. And if they are Christians, the Spanish Inquisition can deal with them. The Spanish Inquisition does not deal with Jews, not in that stage of time, but it does deal with Christians, which are heretics. And these Jews were not that Christians. They were just Jews a few moments ago. So this leads to a very, very massive problem and complexity in the Jewish Sephardic population. The second occasion that occurred that I want to emphasize today is well known. On March 31, 1492, the Edict of Expulsions of the Jews from Spain was signed by Isabella I and by Ferdinand II. Joining their kingdoms together, they decided to rule as the first king and queen of Spain without any Jews in their kingdom. The Jews fled in many directions, but for the most part, they immigrated to around the Mediterranean basin. Most of the Jews immigrated to the Ottoman Empire, but some expelled to England, Netherlands, Italy, Morocco, and also some arrived here in later stages to the Americas. Some conversos and some Jews did arrive to America as well. But also, many Jews fled to the country that was the neighbor of Spain, that is Portugal. And Portugal accepted the Jews and actually meant to expel them, or announced that she is about to expel all of the Jews. That is, Portugal announced that the country will expel all of the Jews. In December 46, the edict was already signed, and it was planned to be executed in the year of 1497. But instead of expelling the Jews, the Portuguese king actually baptized many, many Jews, and now they're Christians, and now they cannot live. And for several years, they are not allowed to live. And between 1507 and 1521, there is a possibility for some of them to immigrate, but this is another complication, another big group of conversos, and this situation is going to be discussed today through a story that we'll read about the Ari. So, when we are talking about Sephardic Jewry, and now I'm relying on the work of Tamar Alexander, that wrote a great book, The Heart is a Mirror, the Sephardic Folklore, that I really deeply recommend you to read. And my research is largely based on her research. So this is her definition. The Sephardic Jews are Jews who trace their lineage to Spain. The exiles have spread throughout the lands of the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, Greece, former Yugoslavia, the land of Israel, and Moroccan cities like Tetuan and Tangier. My mother was born in Tangier. And They also reached Amsterdam, England, the Americas, Italy, and we already said that. So now I want to emphasize two things. Jews that live in the Ottoman Empire are influenced by the Ottoman Empire. Jews that live in Salonika are influenced by the atmosphere and the history and the occurrence in Salonika. Jews that live, Sephardic Jews that live in the Netherlands also are affected by politics and real life in the Netherlands. This is only natural. But there are two main things that are connecting these Jews as Sephardic Jews. One is that they are tracing their lineage to Spain, and the second is the language. The Ladino, the Judeo-Spanish, the Judaismo, the language which is based on medieval Spanish in some kind of combinations with Turkish words or with Greek words or with words in English, okay, depending on their geographical area. So these are the Sephardic Jews. So we talked about folklore. We talked about the Sephardic Jewry, and now I would like to know if there are any questions.
So Ron,
Yeah.
I don't see myself, I'm confused about where I am, but you can hear me, yes?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, so there I am. So someone in the audience would like some clarification. I think it's very worth discussing the relationship of conversos, voluntary and forced converts, and the persecutions of the Inquisition. And what's the relationship between those things? I think many people often don't understand what the juridical power was of the Inquisitions and the fact that actually they were papal and there was state. So maybe you can just give people a little bit more information about the relationship between the Inquisitions, their jurisdiction, and Jewish and Christian identities.
Okay, this is quite complex. I will touch it just briefly. Okay, I think that mostly we do not know how many Jews were converted by force and how many Jews were converted by will, because some Jews just decided to be Christians. It is much easier when you live in medieval Spain. Sometimes you are not allowed to get the job that you want unless you're Christian. So some converted by will, but some converted by force. But it doesn't really matter, because when you are converted, you are a Christian. And it is in the eyes of the church, you're just a Christian. And it is even worse, because you're not a good Christian. You're a new Christian. And this is a stain, because you're not an original. You're not like us. And marking these new Christians also led in Spain and in Portugal and in many other places to riots on new Christians. So old Christians inflicted violence on old Christians. That means that they were still by the people considered somewhat Jews, and by the church they were considered to be Christians, but also were suspected to be conversos, Jews undercover. That means that when you're a converso that has a Jewish heart inside, you're hiding a secret. You're living your whole life with a secret, and if the secret is revealed, it's a huge problem, because the Inquisition will ask you all about it, and they use methods of torture, and this is horrendous. Sorry, it's just awful. I cannot hear you. Sorry.
I want to make sure that there's no background noise.
Okay.
So it does mean that many of those dragged to the inquisitorial courts were in fact conversos.
Yeah.
Right. And this is so that, people often say the Inquisition persecuted Jews. Now, there is some debate. My own colleague, Paolo Tartakov, has shown that the idea that the Inquisition never touched pure Jews is in fact probably not true, but still the majority of the victims, the majority of those because the Inquisition was trying to rout out Christian heresy, and a new Christian, a converso, who remained having some hidden Jewish identity or performed some kind of Jewish ritual or ritual perceived as Jewish was considered a Christian heretic.
That's right.
So the political consolidation of Iberia also was a religious political consolidation. It was an effort of homogeneity and hegemony, religious and political, and conversos were victimized. Yeah.
It also happened in France, for instance. The church put the Talmud on trial.
Yeah.
Because it has heresy, and because of that, 24 carts of Talmud were burned in Paris in the 12th century. So sometimes the Inquisition did odd things that are not only related to Christians, because if Jews are holding a book that contains heresy and says bad things about Jesus Christ, so the church felt that it has the right to investigate.
So we have one other question. I'll give it to you. It may be off topic a little, but someone is asking, how does the term Frank or Frank used in contemporary, I think a person means contemporary Israel, relate to Sephardic Jews? Frankim?
This is a derogatory name. It's not really connected. Frank would be to say that someone is Mizrahi or Sephardic, and it is an attempt to lower their class or to insult.
It's pejorative. It's pejorative.
It's kind of, I'm not sure that children now or teenagers will understand what a Frank is, because it is an insult of different generations.
I'm sure they're new insults.
There are, yeah. Insults are numerous.
Okay, I don't have any. There are no other questions from the chat right now. So you've given a really wonderful background to the question of folklore, and we can now get to hear more about our saint, our tzaddik.
That's great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll bring the presentation back on. No, not this one. Sorry. Okay, so we've answered the questions, and now we are going to go forward. Okay, so after meeting the folk, I would like us to talk about the lore and about the heroes. In the following, we will examine two literary models of heroes for describing the life of a hero. And then we'll get to know the Ari, our hero of the day. The British Lord Raglan suggested a chronological model of a pattern, literary pattern, in which he had 22 stations in life of saints. And it is actually a chronological model that goes from the birth of the saint until his end. So, for instance, the circumstances of his conception are unusual. At birth, an attempt is made to kill him. Okay, let's think for a minute about Moses, or also think about Jesus Christ. Many heroes are being born in circumstances which are not usual. And as children, there is a threat to their lives. And this is the way Lord Raglan showed that if we look at heroes, we can see that there is a human tendency to describe heroes in a certain way. For instance, after a victory over the king and/or a giant, a dragon, or wild beast, the hero becomes important, or a king. Okay, so this is very Christian by nature, because we don't know many Jews that fight a dragon. Okay, this is not really the Jewish way to tell about a hero. A Jewish hero is most likely to be very good at studying Torah rather than killing a dragon. And therefore, Dovnoi suggested a new model, which is, it's very new, but an alternative model which relates Jewish heroes. And Dovnoi is very important because he's the founder of the research of Jewish folklore in Israel, and his research is really impressive and great. So instead of suggesting a chronological model, he said that there are 5 different kinds of stories that are relating to Jewish heroes, to Jewish tzaddikim, saints, and whatever. So first of all, it is stories prior to their birth. Second of all, it is stories that are describing their lives, their biographical stories. Stories that are relating to the time after their death, and also stories about their offsprings, and stories about their belongings. That is, let's say, the tefillin of Rashi, okay? So we have a chronological model, which is more general and by nature more Christian, and it fits the general culture. And we have a more Jewish model. So we are ready to talk about our hero. When we are talking about De'ari, we have some historical facts about him, but most of what we know about De'ari is, in fact, related to stories. It is known that he was born in Jerusalem in 1534 to a Sephardic mother and Ashkenazic father. Oh, I misspelled the word father. His father died when he was 8 years old, and the family immigrated to Egypt. When he lived most of his life, he lived in Egypt, and he grew up with his uncle and his very Sephardic house in a Sephardic community. And after growing up in Egypt, he arrived to Tzfat, or Safed in English. He arrived to Tzfat. I'll say Tzfat because it's kind of weird for me to say Safed, sorry. So he arrived to Tzfat in the year of 1570. And during the 2 years or 2.5 years that he has been working, studying in Tzfat, he changed the Jewish world in an enormous way. It is exceptionally unordinary that a single person will change the Jewish communities all around the world, or most of the communities of the world. And in 2.5 years, it is almost as if he is a hero or a saint. It is hard to understand. How is this possible? So De'ari, and we can see the lion of the National Public Library, the Public Library of New York. De'ari is actually the lion, okay? Because the word Ari in Hebrew, Aryeh, is lion. So De'ari is a lion. The name is Ashkenazi Rabbi Yitzchak, okay? Aleph, Resh, Yud, Ashkenazi Rabbi Yitzchak, De'ari. But he is not an ordinary hero, and he does not have an ordinary name. He is the lion. Okay, so after 2 years, he passed away in Tzfat. He was the most prominent figure in this robust Kabbalic communities in the 16th century in Tzfat. We have very, very important Kabbalic community in Tzfat, and it's very alive, and things are happening in Tzfat. Tzfat is the place to be if you are a Kabbalist. And most of the things that the Ari actually said and thought and taught were not written by his own own hand. He didn't have enough time to write his theology, and his students wrote it down for him. But still, what we know about most of the knowledge that we have about his biographical or heroic figure comes from stories. I want to say something about Kabbalah or Kabbalah. I'm not an expert about Kabbalah, but I'm going to tell you the story, the story of the theology of the Ari. The Ari is talking about a certain moment in time which is unusual. He talks about the moment in time just before the first words of Genesis. Before Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, before the creation of the world, the Ari tells us a great secret. Before the creation of the world, there was a failed attempt to create a world. That means that our world, according to the Ari, is only the second attempt, successful second attempt of the creation. In the first attempt, God poured his light down to some kind of vessels. These vessels are called the Sephirot, the 10 Sephirot. Okay? And these vessels are being filled right now, according to his theology, by the divine energy, light, some of his light, because God is almighty and it has infinite power. But in the first attempt, these Sephirot, or these vessels of energy, did not manage to hold this energy. And for that, they shattered. And they broke, and they shattered, and all of the divine energy that were poured into them just fell down to the underworld. And this is quite unfortunate, because this shattering of the vessels made divine energy go down to the underworld. And in this story or narrative, the Ari explains a very human question, and that is, if God is almighty, and if God is so good, why is there evil in the world? So the Ari says, the evil in the world got his power from the divine energy that fell down to the underworld. Now, our mission is to amend this situation. We are supposed to take this light from the underworld and to ascend it upwards towards the Lord. And this is the way, and we can do it if we do certain things that I won't talk about, because again, I'm not an expert of Kabbalah, but mitzvot, or committing mitzvot, is one way of ascending the divine light upwards. Okay. So this is the theology of the Ari. Now I would like to say a few words about the story about the Ari, and then we will read the story. The Ari is the first Jewish hero that the whole book of stories was written about his life and miracles. We said earlier, when we saw the model of Lord Raglan and the model of Dovnoy, that when we are talking about a hero, we need many stories. We need long cycles of stories, tens of stories. It's not only 1 or 3 or 4 or 5 stories that are scattered. It's stories that are combined and compiled together in an anthology. The first one was an anthology that were compiled and printed in Basel by Shlomo Ben Chaim. He collected the first collections of stories. And there is another thing to say here. All of these stories were told orally. On one stage in time, Shlomo Ben Chaim decided to write them down. And then they are preserved by writing and by print, and they can be, they reach wider reception. And the anthology that won widest reception is Shivchei He'ari. We might know this title from, for instance, Shivchei HaBesht, Okay, the praises of the Ari, the praises of the Best. So this is in fact a new literary genre, Shivchei Ha, stories that tell about the miraculous and the magnificent character of the Ari. So if we have time, we'll talk about this story as well. But I want to ask, how did the Ari become a hero? You know, when Spider-Man became a hero, you know how Spider-Man became a hero. A spider bit him, and in this moment in time, he became a hero because he have now superpowers. He's a spider and he's a man. He's a Spider-Man. Okay, this is a hero. So, what is the time or what is the occasion that is the spider bit of the Ari? What makes him a hero? What shifts his life? So, first of all, this story that I'm about to tell has many versions. And when we are talking about folklore and the definition of folklore, we must relate now to another additional emphasis. Ellen Dundas, the known American folklorist, said that a story or folk story is bound to have multiple versions by definition. For instance, Cinderella has no less than 1,000 versions all across the world. Okay, so this is a folk story. So we see many versions of the story, and now we know we are not looking for the original story always, but we see several stories. I picked one of the stories, and this is the story that we are about to read right now. One day, the Ari sat in prayer in the synagogue in Egypt. And a person sat next to him. When he looked at this person's book or manuscript, he noticed that it is not a prayer book. This person is not using a siddur. He's using a different book. So he got curious and he picked into this book and he tried to figure out what is written over there. And he saw that this book holds great Kabbalist secrets, no less. After the prayer, he approaches the man and tells him, please, I saw this book. What is this book? You must tell me what is the identity of this book that you are holding. The person tells him, I'm sorry. I cannot tell you what is this book because I do not know. I saw that everyone are holding books, so I took a book and I held it, but I do not know how to read in Hebrew. That is because I am a converso. The Ari understands that he's a converso and tells him, okay, this is not a problem. Not a problem at all. Give me this book. I'll give you a siddur. And you know what? I'll pay you for this book. This is an important book. Let me buy it from you. The converso says, you know, I'm not short of money. I'm extremely rich. I'm a huge merchant here. And I came with a lot of merchandise. I'm big. I'm very big. I don't need your money. But, and this is where the story begins to be really Jewish. But, your father-in-law, I've heard, is in charge of taxes in Egypt. If you maybe can ask him maybe to reduce my taxes, the book is yours. So the Ari goes and asks his father-in-law to reduce the man's taxes, and he gets the book from the converso. And this is the point in time in which the spider beats Spider-Man. This book holds such great mysteries, such great knowledge, that the Ari studies from this book, understand things, great secrets. And because of that, he can time travel. We normal people, we study when we are awake, and when we are asleep, we sleep, we dream. No, not the Ari, not the Ari. The Ari, when he slept, he time traveled, and he could ask if his studying was correct. Did he understand well the Zohar today? Did he understand this secret well enough? And if he was wrong, he was told, no, you're wrong. And if he was right, he was encouraged to continue. And he could also go to the academy of the writer of the Zohar, and to the academies of the writers of the Bavli, of the Talmud. And he traveled in his mind, and his soul ascended and traveled because of the book that the converso held in his hand, not knowing what kind of treasure he is holding. Okay. So the main question that I want to ask is, why a converso? Why not a spider? Okay? Why wasn't it possible to say that the Ari just went in the market, and in the market he noticed an old book and took this book? We have many stories like that. And a merchant could have sold him the book. But why a converso? Why a stubborn converso? I think that it is crucial to understand the historical and the Sephardic effects of this story, because first of all, from a social perspective, conversos are not considered to be first-grade Jews. They are considered to be, they are suspected to be Christians. He does not know how to read and write in Hebrew. Maybe he's a Christian that wants to infiltrate our community. And the story does not tell us that the Ari rejected this converso. No, the Ari embraced him, and he let him in the community, and he gave him tax remissions, and he hugs him, and he embraces him, and he allows him to be a part of the community in a social perspective. This is very important because many Jews did not, it was difficult. It was difficult to accept this new Jews, Christians, new Christians, all of this acceptance or embracing the conversos was not the only option. There were other options, and we see that the story tells us what is right. But there are some other reasons. What is a converso if not a person with a secret? A converso holds a secret. When he is in Spain, his secret is that he is a converso and not a Christian. Now, the secret is very deadly. If people will know that he is Jewish in secret, they can kill him. They can inform him. And this is extremely dangerous. When the conversos rejoined their communities, their new Jewish communities, now they still hold a secret because they might be ashamed of their identity. This converso reveals his secret. By revealing his secret, he also allows the Ari to get the book with the secrets. Okay, so this is from the converso side. But mysticism has great interest in secrets. This is what mysticism does, okay? This is the mechanics of mysticism. The Ari reveals and holds many secrets. And with this book, he enhances his understanding in secrets. And his superpower to time travel is being given to him. And he's holding great amounts of secrets. Sometimes he tells us about the secret. One of the most important secrets that he told us all was the narrative or the story of how the world was actually created. There was a first attempt, a failed attempt. And this is a big blessing to the Jewish world. Now we know. Now we know how to fix. Now we know how to ascend vital powers from the underworld and to bring it back to the Lord. But sometimes, when the Ari reveals secrets that are not supposed to be revealed, he's being punished. One time, he reveals a secret because he's pressured to reveal a secret. And because of that, his son dies, no less. And another secret that he tells brings to his own death, a secret that he shouldn't have told. So we have another question. What is the price of revealing a secret? We see here that secrets are somewhat like merchandise. The merchant holds a secret. He knows nothing about the quality of the secret, but he understands that it is very important to the other Jew that he just met. So the price is not very simple. It's not just that and that sum of gold. No, it is very high price because it is reducing all of his taxes. And this is a high price. But the converso pays a personal price. He just said to the Ari that he is a converso, so he is ashamed. The Ari is willing to pay this price. He's convincing his father. But these secrets that he reveals, on the one hand, they have great importance to the Jewish world entirely. And on the other hand, they kill him and his son. So this economy of secrets, this economy of revealing secrets, of holding secrets, this story is also talking about that. And what I wanted to show, and I'm trying to know if we have enough time at that stage of time. I think that we do not have so much time because I'm looking at the time and we don't have time for the additional story. But let us sum this session up. We defined what folklore is. We got to know the Sephardic culture better. We read some stories, or just one story, about a Sephardic hero, the Ari. And we heard some parts of other stories. But we met the converso as a pivotal moment in the life of the saint. And this is very important because the converso is not a thing that you should just put aside. The converso is holding a treasure. And this treasure can change not only one person's life, but it can change all of the lives of the Jews. And it can be so quick. It can be only in 2 or 2.5 years that this secret of the converso will help us all, maybe to get to our salvation. And we also see that the complex identity of Sephardic Jews is emerging. Are they Jews? Are they Christians? Are they new Christians? People that live and grew up as Christians, that hide their identity, their Jewish identity, are bound to have complex identity. And this is one of the main things that are important in Sephardic identity in early modern times. So today we talked about the saint and we checked a V on the saint. Next time we'll talk about Queen Esther, and we'll see her role in the life of conversos. And that's about it. See you next week.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. I'm going to take prerogative to give you a question or two from the chat. Very many people would like to hear the second story, so perhaps you can start next class with the second story. So one of the questions I have is the reception of, from the chat, the reception of Shivchei Ha'ari, did this in praise of Luria, in praise of Isaac Luria, right? Which, like you mentioned, also the comparison to Shivchei HaBesh, in praise of the Baal Shem Tov. To what degree did this work, as it got published and disseminated, did it remain, quote, a Sephardi text, or a text that had global Jewish significance? Meaning, because you are emphasizing sort of medieval Sephardic culture, that's your field, that's what you've spent years mastering. But what happens afterwards? Does it stay within the Sephardic Jewish world in its diaspora, or does it become, if you will, part of the folkloristic heritage of all Jewish communities?
Thank you very much for this question. Of course, the Ari is a hero worldwide in Jewish sense. He's not only a hero of Sephardic Jews. He's a hero of Sephardic origin. If we want to better understand some stories of him, we need to know the Sephardic background and cultural history. But when we are talking about reception, it was translated to Yiddish. It was printed all over Europe. It was translated to English. The reception of this text is ongoing. It was translated to English in the 70s, okay, of this century. So this is stories that are has some origins, but I think that early modern times is also a moment in time in which the Sephardic Jews are no longer the biggest Jewish community. This is the shift, the historical shift. Now they are smaller. And now we have a new community that rises in nowadays Poland and Russia. And those are the main readers of any literature that in this period of time, most of the Jewish literature is Sephardic. But most of the readers are not Sephardic at that point. And this is very interesting because the works of art, the literature that was written by the biggest community in medieval Europe is being read by the next biggest community of new early modern Europe.
So Dubnov was right, sorry. You have these concentrated areas of Jewish cultural productivity and they shift geographically, right? And this idea that the Sephardic library then becomes the library of Ashkenaz is really, I love that. That's really, it's diasporas meeting, but not, they also did meet in person in places like Italy and of course in the land of Israel, but still. So yeah, so you're gonna have to tell people a little bit more of this story.
Yeah.
And you know, you're going to get behind, but that's good. That shows there's rich material here. So many people will want to hear the recording afterwards. I think you really, I want to thank you for giving us such a good overview at the beginning, which is setting the stage for the stories about Esther and the stories of our Joker, which I'm sure everyone is very eager to hear. So thank you so much, Professor Lasry. To our audience, remember, this is one of three. So speaking of Spider-Man, I'm not going to invoke another comic. We say here in the United States, same bat channel, same bat time for Batman. So next Monday and the Monday after, same time, please use your link and sign up and bring your friends. And also you should know that we have other programs of the Bildner Center. On Wednesday, March 23rd, which I guess is only 2 days from now, we have a public talk by The Grace of the Game, The Holocaust, a Basketball Legacy and an Unprecedented American Dream. Former NBA player and executive Ernie Grunfeld is the only athlete in the NBA history whose parents survived the Shoah, the Holocaust, and a new book has been written by his son, a former professional basketball player, Dan Grunfeld, and it details the family's history, an extraordinary American story, as well as the profound impact that basketball had on their lives. Ernie Grunfeld was 10 years old when his family immigrated to the United States from then communist Romania with no knowledge of English and having never touched a basketball. And 10 years later, he stood on the podium as an Olympic gold medalist for the United States. That's at 7 o'clock, and that will be held on Zoom. On April 6th, a live concert by our colleague Rebecca Sipis and her musical compatriots will be playing a beautiful concert, and I can just vouch for it because I've worked very closely with Rebecca Sipis on a concert entitled Exile, Music of the Early Modern Jewish Diaspora. And this is at Mason Gross. It will be held both in person and live streamed, and it's free admission. And that is on April 6th. April 6th, again at Mason Gross. So I want to thank again Dr. Ron Lasry, and I want to thank the staff of the Bildner Center, starting with Karen Small, the managing director of the Alan and Joan Bildner Center for the Study of Jewish Life, to Sarah Portilla, the program coordinator, to Darcy Marr, who does all of our publicity and communications, and to Gabriel Duke, who is our administrative assistant who helps with everything. Many of you have already corresponded with him, who makes sure that we start and finish on time and with good slides, etc. We can't do it without him. So thank you very much. See you next Monday. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Lasry, for this fascinating introduction to the rich world and complexity of Sephardic Jewry.
Thank you.